Imagine hearing the distant rumble of hooves at first faint, almost like thunder on the horizon. Then it grows louder, heavier, until the ground itself seems to tremble beneath your feet. You look ahead and there they are. A line of iron-clad warriors, both man and horse encased in armor, advancing like an unstoppable force of nature. These were the Roman Cataphracts, one of the most terrifying cavalry units of the ancient world, and when they charged, entire armies could collapse in moments. But these warriors were not originally Roman. Their story begins in the East, among powerful empires like the Parthians and later the Sassanids, who revolutionized warfare with heavily armored cavalry designed for pure shock impact. Unlike traditional Roman cavalry used mainly for scouting, skirmishing, or chasing down fleeing enemies, these riders were built for one purpose: to smash directly into the enemy line and break it apart with overwhelming force. When Roman armies first encountered them, the effect was devastating. It became clear that Rome's traditional tactics were no longer enough. And so, as it had done so many times before, Rome adapted. The empire began to recruit and train its own cataphract units, known as cataphractarii and clibanarii. Many of these soldiers came from eastern provinces, where this style of combat was already deeply rooted. They brought with them not only their skills, but also their traditions, transforming the Roman army from within. These warriors were unlike anything Rome had fielded before. The rider was covered almost completely in armor scale or lamellar plates protecting the chest, arms, and legs, while even the horse was partially or fully armored, its head, neck, and flanks shielded by metal. This made them incredibly resistant to arrows and light weapons, turning them into moving fortresses. However, this protection came at a cost: weight. Cataphracts were slower, less agile, and required immense strength, discipline, and training to control both themselves and their heavily burdened mounts. Their primary weapon was the contues, a long, heavy lance that required both hands to wield. This meant they carried no shield, relying entirely on their armor for defense. But when that lance was leveled and the charge began, the results were devastating. The sheer momentum of a fully armored rider and horse crashing into enemy ranks could shatter shields, break formations, and create chaos in seconds. Infantry lines that held firm against lighter troops could suddenly collapse under the impact, while enemy cavalry often fled rather than face such a terrifying force. Yet the power of the cataphracts was not only physical, it was deeply psychological. The sight alone could unnerve even experienced soldiers. Imagine standing in formation, gripping your weapon, as this wall of steel advances toward you, the sun reflecting off polished armor, the sound of hooves pounding like a drum of war. Fear would spread quickly, and hesitation even for a moment could mean disaster. Despite their strength, cataphracts were not invincible. Their heavy armor made them vulnerable in difficult terrain, such as hills, forests, or muddy ground, where speed and maneuverability were limited. They could also be overwhelmed if isolated or surrounded by more agile enemies. For this reason, Roman commanders used them carefully, as part of a coordinated strategy. Infantry would pin the enemy in place, lighter cavalry would harass and protect the flanks, and then, at the decisive moment, the cataphracts would charge, delivering a crushing blow exactly where it mattered most. Over time, these elite cavalry units became increasingly important, especially during the later Roman Empire, when warfare across much of Eurasia began to favor heavily armored horsemen. In many ways, the cataphracts were the direct ancestors of the medieval knight, representing a key step in the evolution of warfare from the ancient world to the Middle Ages. So when you think of Rome, don't imagine only disciplined legions and shield walls. Picture instead the thunder of armored cavalry, the clash of steel, and the unstoppable charge of warriors who turned themselves into living weapons. Because the Roman cataphracts were more than soldiers, they were a symbol of adaptation, power, and the relentless drive of an empire that refused to be outmatched.